Friends, when you and I come to understand the true meaning of this thing called life, we shall lose all sense of fear and insecurity. And in their place, we shall find faith and love, and we shall learn how to live more successfully. There is a key to this great change that can take place in our lives, a golden key available to all of us. It is available to you here and now. Later on, I shall tell you what kind of a key it is and how you may turn it in the lock of your experience. Today we are going to talk about the sense of guilt and failure that seems to harass so many people. It is truly remarkable how much time we spend in crying over the mistakes we should have left behind us. Too often, the day in which we live is sandwiched between morbid memories of yesterday and fearful anticipations of tomorrow. Yet each day is a fresh beginning. How wonderful for us to realize the significance of this. It is one of the great lessons of life. Of course, you have made mistakes, and so have I. And who hasn't? And shouldn't we be as willing to forgive ourselves as to hope that others may forgive us? When Jesus said that you should love your neighbor as yourself, he did not tell you to exclude yourself. You ought to think well both of your neighbor and yourself. This spiritual genius rightly said that you cannot think well of yourself unless you do think well of others, and that you cannot really think well of others until you have first come to think well of yourself. Perhaps we should emphasize this: love thy neighbor as thyself. Think of yourself and others as being one in life. Think of that deep self within you as being one with the deep self in everyone else. For there is a unity in all life, a oneness running through everything that lives, what Loyal called the thread of the all-sustaining beauty that runs through all and doth all unite. Now you and I wish to feel that life holds nothing against us, that even though we have made many mistakes, they will no longer affect us when we stop making them. It is never too late. Never too late to know of the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. Never too late to begin to be kind. Never too late to forgive ourselves and others. Never too late for a new day to dawn. But our minds are a strange mixture of joy and morbidity. We all have had so much negative and unhappy experience that it seems almost too good to be true, to believe that it really never is too late, that right now in a split second, the Sun of Truth can dispel the clouds of despair and bring new joy and new hope to the heart. Probably one of the greatest lessons we shall ever learn is right here, that all of the mistakes of yesterday can be canceled out now, today, if we permit them to be. The desert waited a long time to be cultivated with a hand of kindness, and its waste places might blossom, irrigated by the water from the high mountain top, where the everlasting snows of heaven melt down into a liquid, life-giving flow. Yes, the desert waited, but the mountain tops were always there, sublime in their majesty, and the sun was always shining, ever giving of its warmth and color, and the natural law of gravity was always causing the water to flow down to the desert. It was the desert that waited, not the water, not the sun, not the snow-topped mountains. But on that first day, when the water reached the dry and parched desert, new life began to spring within it, new hope. The thorn disappeared and the rose bush blossomed. The cactus was uprooted, and the date palm took its place. The long, hot sands gave way to the green verdure of irrigated land. Did the desert look back upon its day of unproductivity? I don't think so. And did the mountain top condemn or judge? Did the water complain or the snow refuse to melt? Did the sun withhold its warmth? Now perhaps this is what Jesus meant in one of his great parables, the parable about the laborers. For he said there was a certain man who had a vineyard. Early in the morning he hired laborers to work for a penny a day. Later in the day he hired other men at the third, at the sixth, and the 11th hour. And when evening came, he called them all together, and each received the same compensation. Naturally, some of them objected to this, but the Lord of the vineyard said, I will give unto this last even as unto thee. I will do what I will with mine own. Is thine eye evil, because I am good? In this parable, Jesus was likening the vineyard to life, and the laborers to our relationship with it. Those who early in their experience came to understand their relationship to the Lord of the vineyard, and those who discover the laws of life late in the day, must all finally reap the same reward. In other words, God gives as fast as we receive. God and the spiritual kingdom are timeless. There is no late and no early to this thing called life. Solomon, with all his wisdom, knew nothing about electricity. Therefore he was compelled to use a candle. God had not withheld anything from him, for God had already given him all he could take. Thousands of years later, someone discovered electricity, coming in at the 11th hour, as it were. But God was not partial to the one who later discovered electricity. He merely gave him what he was ready to take. And to those who accused the Lord of the vineyard of being partial, his answer was, Is thine eye evil because I am good? Have you less because others possess a good equal to yours? Is there not good enough to go around? All do not learn the laws of life and the rules of the game of living in the same hour. Is it wrong that we should have the benefits of electricity because Solomon and Moses knew nothing about them? Are the comforts of modern invention evil because antiquity did not enjoy them? The great lesson is that life delivers itself into our capacity to receive it. The outpouring from the cosmic horn of plenty can only fill the cup that we lift to it. A pail turned on its side cannot be filled with rain from heaven. The Lord of the vineyard stands for the love of God and the givingness of the Spirit. The vineyard represents the fruits of life, and we are the laborers. And the reward, the compensation, is the law of action and reaction that measures to each according to his own acts. To the ones who came in at an earlier hour, they represent those who had gained some slight knowledge of spiritual things before others. They are indeed fortunate. But the ones who came in the third, the sixth, and the 11th hours also entered into the kingdom. Their reward must be equal to those who came first. If yesterday we did not know that God is love, then yesterday we could not enter into communion with that love. It is in the hour of recognition that love comes full-orbed to our experience. This parable is a lesson of hope. We are all searching. We are all on the pathway of self-discovery. And this self-discovery cannot be separated from the discovery of God, for God is the supreme self, the ever-present reality. We have always been living in the mind of God, but we have not realized it. The awakening is not to God, but to us. Don't you think this is a wonderful concept? That the awakening is not to God, but to us? God did not say, when man made his first reaping machine, it is too late. You have reaped by hand so long that forevermore you are condemned to the laborious effort of hand harvesting. The laws of nature wait on our recognition. But a They are always ready to spring into spontaneous expression for us. Don't you think that love also must wait in the same way? But since God can do only for us what we permit him to do through us, don't you think that perhaps even God is waiting on our acceptance? And according to this parable, our acceptance cannot be just for ourselves alone. As Jesus pointed out, there is good enough to go around, and we dare not withhold from others that which we desire for ourselves. Perhaps this is one of the greatest lessons of life. And yet how carefully Jesus pointed that this great good we desire will include ourselves through our sharing with others. We dare not withhold this sharing. We should not wait until tomorrow. We should not think it is too late to enter into God's good today. Let us then learn to rejoice in the day in which we are living, to find happiness in the commonplace. In this way alone do we exalt the human. In this way alone can we learn to recognize in each other what the hope of the ages has waited so long to discover, that God really is in his heaven, and that this heaven is right where we are, and that all is right with God's world, and will be right with ours, when we know this and act as though it were true. But we must learn to live as though it really were God's world. The great teacher has told us that we cannot do this until we first learn to do it on that broad-gauge basis which will not withhold any good from anyone. No, it is never too late to learn. It is never too late to enter into that divine inheritance which rightfully belongs to us.
Many grateful men and women have written to Dr. Holmes telling him how life has unfolded for them once they learn to conquer their fears. From Dr. Holmes' files, we have selected this letter from Mrs. M. B. of Oxnard, California. She says, "It is with gratitude and joy that I write to tell you that my husband has found work. He has been with the company 3 weeks and has received his first check, and he has many good prospects for more sales. I feel and know that everything is going to work out for our good." What comment would you like to make, Dr. Holmes?
The key to this letter from Mrs. M. B. of Oxnard is in the lines where she says, "It is with gratitude and joy that I write," and again where she writes, "I feel and know that everything is going to work out for our good." It is because she feels and knows, because she recognizes with gratitude, that her prayer of affirmation has reached a point of acceptance in her own mind. And it is in a certain sense in our own minds that our affirmative prayers are answered. That is, in the sense that the mind must accept the gift of life. This she has most certainly done.
Mrs. M.G. of Southgate, California writes, "More poised and positive thinking is now taking the place of the negative state of mind I had been using for years. I realize more and more every day that I am the doorkeeper of my mind, that it is I who let certain thoughts in and shut others out. May I say thank you again and again." That's certainly a fine testimonial, isn't it, Dr. Holmes?
Yes, it is, Bill. The writer is following the advice of the apostle, who said, "Whatsoever things are good and beautiful and true, think on these things." She is thinking affirmatively, and she is praying with acceptance. Naturally, I appreciate her gratitude. However, any thanks she owes is certainly not to me alone, but I am delighted to point to what I believe is the greatest truth in human existence, that there is a power of good available to everyone, and that it is right where we are.
Now, here is Dr. Holmes to bring you his meditation for today.
As I mentioned earlier, there is a golden key to right living, and that key is prayer, affirmative prayer. For prayer is our direct line of communion with God. It is through affirmative prayer that we learn to clear the mind of negative thoughts, of doubts and fears. And this we must do if we are to be aware of the presence of God within and around us. Let us then take this as our prayer for the day, Thou art ever with me, and all that I have is Thine. Let us join in affirming God's presence here and now. Let us shut every other thought out of the mind as we listen confidently, peacefully, and quietly. Realizing that you are in an ever-present good, and believing that the law of good can bring everything that is desirable into your experience, begin to think and act just as though every wrong condition of yesterday were being converted into something new and better. Consciously try to feel that there is nothing in the universe which holds anything against you, and that there is nothing in you that has any resentment against any person, any condition, or anything. Learn to pray affirmatively, and to believe in your own prayer. Say then quietly to yourself, I believe that all the mistakes I have ever made are swallowed up in the love, a peace, and a life that is greater than I am. I surrender all my past mistakes into the keeping of this ever-present divine and perfect love. I feel that love is guiding me into kindness and into cooperation with life, into a real, deep, and sincere affection for everyone. I turn my thought to the belief that today is a fresh beginning, a new start, a joyous adventure on the pathway of an eternal progress. I am trusting love to guide me. I am believing that love guides everyone. I am learning to see the good in everyone and to rejoice in it. I feel that today is bright with hope and happy with fulfillment. I know that today and tonight I shall sleep in peace and wake in joy, and I shall live in the sure knowledge that good alone governs.